Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Beef Up Front podcast. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, here on Pick Swap Media. Today's show, we're going to be introducing our weekly show. It's going to be a quick episode every week. We're going to be bringing it to you for the rest of the football season, and it's going to be the Beef Up Front fantasy football show, the Stardom Situm list. So I'm going to be giving you two quarterbacks, two running backs, two receivers, two tight ends, and a defense that I would advise you to start this week in fantasy if they're on your roster. And then we will also be giving two quarterbacks, two running backs, two receivers, two tight ends, and a defense that I would advise you to sit if they're on your team. I threw defense in there as well just because some people like to they like to pick up a defense every week and just play it by ear kind of with that. So I thought that would be an interesting one to throw in where, all right, if this unit is out on your waiver wire, you might be able to go out, pick them up, and have them as your starting defense for the week. But this show is going to be a pretty quick episode. This will probably be the longest one as I'm just kind of relaying what the show is going to be looking like for the season. But guys like Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, like those are must-start guys no matter what. They're like what we like to call matchup proof. Like it doesn't matter who they're playing. They could be playing the 85 Bears or the early 2010 Seahawks. Like if these guys are on your team, those top level guys, you know who they are. You're starting them every week. Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson. So I'm going to be giving you guys who are kind of outside the top 10, at least for running backs and receivers. And then the quarterbacks, like anything outside of those top like 4 or 5 guys, I'm going to consider one of the starts or the sits. But we're going to be going through this each week, giving you just a little tidbit on a player and his matchup and why I like them or why I don't like them for the upcoming week. So, like I said, 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 2 tight ends, and a defense. Like even if you're like a daily fantasy player and you like just playing that kind of way, this could be a good show for you as well. If you're just looking for some more information for guys that you want to pick up on a weekly basis for your team. So we'll start it off with we're going to run through the entire start list first before we get into the sit list. So we'll start it off with quarterback. And our first quarterback that we're looking to start week 1, that's Jalen Hurts. Eagles will be playing at the Detroit Lions this week. This is a really good matchup, I think, for Hurts. Last year, Philadelphia went to Detroit and won 44-6. That was the best game of the season, I think, for the Eagles offense, maybe the Saints game as well. But Hurts had some really good success up there last year. He's going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback if he stays healthy, just because he has a lot more weapons. This should be an improved offense, and he also offers that rushing value as well. That's very, very important when it comes to fantasy. So if Hurts is on your team, he's a must start this week, in my opinion. I think that the Eagles are going to be for a tough battle in the first half. He might not get out to the hottest start, but I think over the second half of the game, the Eagles' talent's going to overwhelm the Lions at the end of the day. A lot of people are high on the Lions. They're kind of viewed as like America's underdog team right now, I guess you could say. They're the Hard Knocks special. So people are going to be on the Lions, and a lot of people are going to be betting on them, and I think that's what Vegas wants. And I think Jalen Hurts and the Eagles are going to eventually take over that game in the second half, and he's going to be in for a big day. So 44-6 last year, they should be in a pretty good position to go up there and win this game, and I think he starts off the season right for what could be a dark horse MVP and maybe even a number 1 fantasy ranking as the quarterback by the end of the season. Next quarterback that I'm looking to start, he was ranked outside of the top 10. So this is a guy who might not be your normal starter every week, but if he's on your team, I really like him this week. And that's quarterback Derek Carr at the Chargers. The Chargers, I think, are one of the best teams in the NFL, a loaded defense, but they went out and picked up J.C. Jackson, the cornerback from the Patriots, this offseason, but he just had a minor procedure done, a surgery, so he might not even be playing week 1. And that's a big loss. When you look at Derek Carr's talent around him this year, Devontae Adams, they went out and acquired, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, they're going to be a team that I think throws the ball around the yard, and he's going to have opportunities for a lot of yards and a lot of passing touchdowns this season. And I think that starts off week 1. This game, in my opinion, is going to be a shootout in the 30s or something. It's one of the higher totals of the week. That's another good little fantasy football tidbit. You go and look at the gambling over-under total for the matchup. Look, if you're kind of on the fence about some guys, look at some of the players or some of the teams that have a higher total that week. That means they're expecting more points for that game to be a high-scoring affair. That's going to translate to a lot of fantasy success for your guys most times, more times than not. So I like Derek Carr to get his season off on the right foot. I think he's a guy who's going to compete for the passing yards title this year. I just think with J.C. Jackson's status in question, and the Chargers did struggle on defense last year, they did make some good adjustments, but I think Derek Carr is in shape for a nice 300-yard and potential 3-touchdown week one. That would definitely make him a top 10 fantasy quarterback this week. We move to the running backs now. First guy that I'm looking to start, that's Javonte Williams, running back for the Broncos at the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are going to be really bad this year. You look at their defensive front, not a very good unit. Javonte Williams is kind of being talked about as one of the breakout players in the NFL this year. He should have a really good chance to kind of come onto the scene. And you never know with the weather up there in Seattle with the rain and the wind. It's always pretty nasty up there. We're not sure what we're going to get on Monday night because it's really fickle weather up there. It kind of changes every day. I think that if you get a nice rainy game, that's going to set up for Williams to get a lot of touches as well. So I really like that matchup, and I think they're going to be winning that game pretty handily. So that's going to be a lot more opportunities for carries down the stretch for Javonte Williams and have a good week one. Next, we're going to go running back Antonio Gibson of the Commanders. They're playing the Jaguars. He's kind of been talked down on this offseason, and it sounded like Brian Robinson, before he was unfortunately shot, he was going to be the starting running back for Washington. It sounds like he's going to be able to come back and play this year, which is awesome. That's really good to see after that tragic event. But Antonio Gibson has a chance to kind of, I'm not going to say revive his career because he's only going into year 3 and he's been pretty productive. I'm not sure why they're down on him. They might just be really high on Robinson. But I think there's a good chance for Gibson to claim that running back 1 spot back for Washington. And you go against a Jaguars team that is probably going to be one of the lower teams in the league again this year. Maybe I think has a chance to compete for the 7th spot in the wild card in the AFC. Maybe a 500 record. I had them going 6-11. I just don't think they have all the talent right now, and the defense on that unit needs some work. They have a lot of young guys, and I think with a new head coach, a lot of new faces, it's going to be a bit of an adjustment period for them. And I think Gibson has a lot to prove in week 1. So he's a really good receiving back as well. He should be involved in that. Carson Wentz is a pretty experienced quarterback when it comes to hitting his running backs in the passing game. He's liked to do that over his career. So I like Antonio Gibson to have a good week 1. He's got something to go out there and prove. Now we go to the receivers. First receiver we're going to have, that's going to be Jerry Jeudy of the Broncos at the Seahawks. I got a few Broncos on this list this week. I think that's going to be one of the more lopsided games in week 1. I think Jerry Jeudy breakout season is incoming with Russell Wilson in the fold now. I think he's going to be like Russ's Tyler Lockett type of receiver that he had back in his Seattle days. I think he gets off to a good start here against a bad Seahawks team with a poor secondary, another team that has a lot of young faces on that side of the ball, and it's going to be an adjustment period, I think, as these guys get acclimated to the NFL. So I like Jerry Jeudy to have a good week 1. Another receiver I'm looking to start, we're going to go with Allen Robinson of the Rams in his first game in LA versus the Bills. Bills are coming to that game as a 2.5-point favorite, but this team on the back end, I think, is where I'm a little bit worried about them. Jordan Poyer just had an injury recently. Not sure if he'll be able to play week 1, especially with it being a short week. He's not going to have that chance to rest up all the way till Sunday. He might not be playing because that's a Thursday night game. And then Tre'Davious White tore his ACL at the end of the season last year, so he's on the PUP list right now. That's going to throw not a great secondary out there if they're missing both Poyer and Tre'Davious White. So I think Allen Robinson in his first game with the Rams could be in for a big day. And he was one of my underrated players in fantasy this year. I think he's in for a big year playing that Odell or that Robert Woods role for that Rams offense opposite Cooper Kupp. So look out for Allen Robinson against a banged up Bills secondary. Now we'll move to the tight ends. We got Zach Ertz versus the Chiefs. Without DeAndre Hopkins, I think Zach Ertz could be the main kind of passing option at the beginning of the season for this offense with Hollywood Brown. The Chiefs are another team with a kind of a remade secondary and safety. So if they're going to be covering the tight ends with some safeties, it's just an adjustment period. I think that it might take a little bit getting used to finding out guys' roles, and I think Ertz will be able to take kind of advantage in that week 1 and see a lot of targets, especially with DeAndre Hopkins out of the fold there for the first 6 games due to that suspension. So I think Zach Ertz is a viable player to start in week 1 for your fantasy team. Another tight end we're looking to start, we're going to go Pat Frymuth at the Bengals. I think Mitch Trubisky Frymuth, the Steelers tight end, if you don't know that already, but I think Mitch Trubisky is going to be kind of playing a little bit scared and conservative. I think he just wants to not mess it up. I think that's kind of what they're preaching to him as Kenny Pickett kind of gets ready behind the scenes. This is a team with elite defense, one of the better groups in the league, and then some really nice skill players as well. But he just kind of has to be that game manager type role, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of targets for guys like Frymuth just underneath. So I think once Kenny Pickett comes into the fold as the full-time starting quarterback there, the receivers are really going to benefit from that. But I think for now, Pat Frymuth, the tight end, is going to see a lot of targets early in the season from Trubisky. So I like him to have a nice week one. And then the one defense that I think you should be definitely looking to start this week is the Broncos at the Seahawks. I've talked about it all offseason how I think the Seahawks are really going to struggle this year. I think the Broncos are going to really ramp it up in this game and have the opportunity to kind of get after Geno Smith, sack him a few times, get some interceptions, and keep him pretty low scoring. So I like the Broncos there. So just to run through those starts, again, we're going to be looking to start if they're on your team. Jalen Hurts, Derek Carr, Javonte Williams, Antonio Gibson, Jerry Jeudy, Allen Robinson, Zach Ertz, Pat Frymuth, and the Broncos defense. Now we'll get into the sit part of the show. We're going to start it off with the quarterbacks. We'll run down just like we did with the quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight end, and defense for the start. So the quarterbacks, I'm looking to sit Dak Prescott week one versus the Bucs. This is a makeshift offensive line right now, kind of in front of him. Lyle Collins gone, Tyron Smith out for the season. They just signed Jason Peters to play left tackle, who's 40 years old, a future Hall of Famer, but not the same player he used to be for sure. And it's going to be an adjustment period, I think, up front when they're figuring out that lineup. I'm not even sure if Peters is going to be playing week one, and you get one of the tougher defenses in the league with a really good defensive front. You got Akeem Hicks, Vita Vea, Shaq Barrett, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who I think is going to have a big year, and some playmakers back there in the secondary. It's a tough week one matchup with the Cowboys kind of adjusting to a lot of new faces in some places there. So Michael Gallup's out. Amari Cooper's gone. I just think week one it could be a rough week for Dallas, especially Dak Prescott. Another quarterback we're looking to sit this week. I had a player from his team on the start list with Zach Ertz with the Chiefs. I just think they're going to throw the ball, so he's going to be getting targets. That's why I had him on there, just because he's that going to kind of be that main guy with Hollywood Brown, I think, trying to fill that Hopkins role. But I don't think Kyler Murray is going to have a good week one. I think they had a really rough offseason. A lot of bad looks for him just with his whole contract situation, his contract clause. It was just a rough offseason, I think, if you were Kyler Murray, besides getting that payday, getting those millions in the bank account. But I think they're in for a rough season, and I think that could be evident in week one here. This game does, though, have the potential to be a shootout, but I don't think that this Cardinals offense is going to get off on the right foot this year. And I think the Chiefs defense is a pretty good unit, and they have a really nice defensive front and a good pass rush that I think is going to be able to get after Kyler and kind of contain him in the running game. So this is like a swing for the fence, I think, for me. This game could be a shootout, could be 45-42, or it could be like a butt kicking by Kansas City winning like 31-10. It wouldn't surprise me either way. So this one I'm not that confident in, but I'm off the Kyler Murray bandwagon this year, and I think week one kind of shows that he's got some stuff to figure out there if he wants to be worth all that money that he just got paid. Now we'll move on to the running backs. We're going to go with Breece Hall, the Jets rookie running back versus the Ravens. It sounds like Zach Wilson might play. It said that Robert Saleh will decide or announce by Wednesday. But if it's Wilson, it's going to be a hobbled Wilson, not having much training camp time, not much practice recently, or Joe Flacco. So I think that there's a good chance that the Ravens stack the box against the Jets and say, find a way to beat us, because they have two really good corners on the outside. Make them beat them in the passing game. And I think they're really just going to look to shut down that run game and kind of make them one-dimensional. That's a really good defensive front in Baltimore too. So not exactly a great welcome to the NFL moment for Breece Hall, but I think he's in for a rough week one. Another running back looking to sit. We're going to go Miles Sanders, running back for the Eagles at the Lions. He just returned to practice Thursday after missing about the past 2 or 3 weeks of training camp. I don't think if he does play week one, I don't think that he's going to be getting his normal share of the carries, the Eagle share of the carries, I guess you could say, in the backfield that week. I think they're going to be spreading it out to their new passing targets with A.J. Brown, looking to get the ball to Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith. And then Jalen Hurts eats up some rushing carries. Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott. They just went out and got Trey Sermon as well. So I think they're going to be sharing the ball around the backfield. And Miles Sanders might get more of that bell cow work as the season goes on, but I think they're going to kind of ease him back in as he's come back from an injury. So there's definitely a more enticing running back to start out there in week one than Miles Sanders. We'll move to the receivers now. We're going to go another guy from the Seahawks-Broncos game. That one's on here a lot. That's going to be Tyler Lockett versus the Broncos. Not confident in Geno Smith. The one thing I do think it's going to be a kind of a butt kicking from Seattle or from Denver to Seattle this week. So that could give them an opportunity to get some nice garbage time points and throw them from behind. But a really elite secondary there in Denver. It's going to be tough to throw on them, especially when you have Geno Smith as your quarterback. Tyler Lockett could be in for a pretty bad fantasy season. I think that starts week one. Next wide receiver looking to sit. We're going to go Chase Claypool at the Bengals, kind of like I talked about with Frymuth. I think Mitch Trubisky is going to just try to play it safe and not really push the ball down the field much. Claypool, it does a lot of his damage down the field, especially with the ball in his hands after the catch. So that's a guy where I don't think he's going to have that great of success until he gets back, gets Kenny Pickett in the fold, who I think is going to be able to push the ball down the field more. So Claypool, I think, is going to really struggle this season in fantasy until they prove they can pass the ball down the field. Like I said with Frymuth, I think Trubisky is just going to kind of play it safe and try to just play the underneath game. That's why he's going to benefit. Claypool could struggle, so I'm not looking to start him this week at the Bengals. We move to the tight ends. We're going to go Mike Gesicki versus the Pats. He's had a weird offseason. He's on the franchise tag. He's been subject to trade rumors. It doesn't sound like he's really part of Mike McDaniel's plans as his tight end going forward. So I don't know what you're getting out of him, his role-wise. So that's a guy I'm staying away from, especially versus the Pats team with Bill Belichick back there. He's always pretty good at locking up the tight end position. And then our next tight end we're looking to sit, we're going to go Cole Kmet versus the 49ers, who was one of my sleeper tight ends. I think he could have a nice year. But the 49ers are one of the best defenses in the league. Fred Warner, a really good linebacker there in the middle. He should be matching up with Kmet in coverage sometimes, and he's a good coverage linebacker. So I think he is in for a pretty poor showing in week one, as the 49ers, I think, are going to beat up on the Chicago Bears this week. We know I'm really low on the Bears. And then my defense that I'm looking to sit, I said in my NFC North preview podcast that I think this might be the best defense in the NFC. But week one, I don't think is going to show it. They play at the Vikings, who I'm really high on this year. I think they're going to be able to throw the ball around the yard, and they can also gash you in the running game as well. So the Packers, I think that game has the potential to be a shootout there, and I don't think the Packers are a good start for week one. But going forward, they're going to be one of the better units in the league, in my opinion. So just to run through the sit list again, we got Dak Prescott and Kyler at quarterback, Breece Hall and Miles Sanders at running back, Tyler Lockett, Chase Claypool at receiver, Mike Gesicki and Cole Kmet at tight end, and then the defense, the Packers. But like I said, this is going to be a pretty quick show, a little just tidbit on some players and some matchups for your fantasy lineup each week. So make sure to check it out. Stay tuned. My goal is to get these up every Tuesday. That's going to be our record time for this. So start 'em, sit 'em, weekly Beef Up Front fantasy show. Make sure to check us out, like, subscribe, and we will talk next week for week two. Best of luck in week one.